and she uh she was just so excited when Muse got your first book. So
I
hurrah.
was
I
I
love
was
it.
so excited when that happened.
We're talking a little behind the scenes here on how
Yes.
it's behind the scenes action as you all are joining us. So, hi, everybody. Thanks for coming in today and another great virtual event that we're going to have. I was talking to Elizabeth and Rachel in the green room and just saying how much I still love doing these. And I love that we still have a great audience that comes in and watches us and listens to us. And the views afterwards on our YouTube channel are great too. So, hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Rachel.
Thank you so
Hi,
much for
everybody.
having me.
Oh, absolutely. So, for most of you have been here before, know the routine. Rachel and Elizabeth will chat for, 30-ish minutes. I'll do my quick intro and go away. I'll put into the chat how to order the book. And we always love that. And if you can't order it from Warwick's, I always say this. I mean, we love if you support Warwick's, but support any independent that's your local or your favorite. So, however you get your books, hopefully you're getting them from a local independent bookstore. Um, After they're done chatting, we will take some audience Q&A. So I know you all know how to use Zoom now, but I still have to do my job and my due diligence and tell you that there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Pop your questions in there and we will get those to Elizabeth and Rachel. And just real quick before we start, Elizabeth, where are you calling in today for us?
From my home just outside of Nashville.
I love it.
Oh,
And
beautiful there, eh?
I
Oh,
know
it
it's, yeah,
is.
some green rolling hills, I'm assuming.
It is beautiful here. It's very green.
Yep. How's the weather there today?
Well, it's finally cooled off a little bit. It was the high today was about 80, but the humidity isn't so bad. So actually, I
Let's
just went for a walk a little while ago. It's lovely.
love it.
You're
And
so
Rach,
close to Parnassus too, eh? That's
Oh,
such a good
yes.
bookshop. Oh
such
my
a great
goodness.
store.
I,
Love
I
that store.
do, I do love to go there. Absolutely.
Yep, that's a good one. And Rachel, are you at home? Are you calling in
I
from
am. I'm
Toronto?
at home and I'm in Toronto. And we've actually had, oh, it's cooled down, which was great because we had the hottest, stickiest, stupidest summer ever. And Julie, we did these all summer, so everyone knows I hate summer. I do. I hate it. I am a fall, autumn, winter girl. I love snow up to my shoulders.
Yep,
So we've been having some really crisp mornings. It's been beautiful here. Blue, blue skies.
love it.
Um, and yeah, so it's really nice
It's
to
cool.
talk to Warwick's
I
again.
love it. And just for those that don't know, we're located in San Diego. I'm the director of events for Warwick, so I do all the virtual, all the in-person events. We've got a 1,500 person event coming up Thursday, so I'm a little
Well, who is it on Thursday?
Rebecca Kwong, RF Kwong, Yellow
Oh
Smoke Battle,
wow.
Yellow
Oh,
Face.
I love her
Oh yeah.
books.
And
Wow.
I've been watching interviews with stuff. I'm so excited because she just seems like she's lovely. So I can't wait. So
She's amazing.
yeah, so that'll be
Cool.
a little bit, so I'm a little crazy, but it's all good. All good stuff. So with that, let me introduce these wonderful authors and I will go away so y'all can hear a great conversation. So Elizabeth Bass Parman grew up entranced by family stories, such as the time her grandmother woke to find Eleanor Roosevelt making breakfast in her kitchen. So I'm sure we're going to hear about that. She worked for many years as a reading specialist for a nonprofit and spends her summers in a cottage by a Canadian lake. She has two grown daughters, and as she says, lives outside of Nashville with her husband and maybe a Maltapoo, Pippin. She's here today to talk about her new book, which is behind her there, Bees in June, and that Rachel's holding
Yay.
up too.
So beautiful.
Yeah, love it. And joining her is our ever favorite Rachel McMillan. As many of you know, Rachel is the author of over 20 novels, including the best-selling The London Restoration and The Mozart Code, and the upcoming Operation Scarlet. She has also co-written The Liberty Scarf and The Castle Gatekeepers. Her works of nonfiction include Dream Plan Go and the upcoming An Aim at Eternity, The Life of Christopher Wren. As she said, Rachel lives in Toronto, where she works as a literary agent, always planning her next trip to Vienna, and is the hardest working person in this industry. I'm just saying. And with that, ladies, have a great conversation. I'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks so much, Julie. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Elizabeth.
I'm
Oh,
so thrilled to finally have a chance to talk with you.
Oh, likewise. I just think you're so neat. I love your covers. I love your books. Whereabouts is your cottage? What lake?
Well, it's off the Georgian Bay.
Oh my gosh, that's
It's between,
amazing.
yes, Perry Sound. We're between Perry Sound and Sudbury.
That's so cool. So,
Mhm.
everyone knows I live in Toronto, but my hometown is actually Orillia, Ontario, which is on the
Oh,
cusp of
yeah.
Muskoka. That's where I'm from.
Sure.
And so I know that area really well. And oh, cool. That's a beautiful part of the country. And how neat that you get to spend time there.
It's beautiful there. It's a family cottage. I've been going there since I was born. And actually, a lot of Bees in June was written at the cottage, sitting on the
So,
porch.
one of the notes I had about bees in June was that there is, yes, and I want to tell readers I'm not spoiling things when I talk about the fact that there's a huge theme of grief and loss in this book because it
Yes.
is on the back cover. And we are introduced to it very early on. But one of the things that really resonated with me about this book is that even though it deals with this horrible loss from our main character, there's such a serenity to the book. I almost felt when I read it at a time when, there's so much upheaval in the world and there's so much bombasting us every day with the news, with war, with everything that we're seeing. There's such an inherent sense of peace and nostalgia and serenity. So, how lovely that some of that was evoked from your being by a lake on the deck and just dreaming this up. And the first question I had is actually where we're talking about it in the little green room before we got on here. It just struck me that I had just recently read your article in People magazine about Queen Elizabeth and her bees, and I noticed the date, and it's actually the anniversary of her death today. What a magnificent life that woman led. Can you talk a little bit about, for those who haven't read the article yet, um, where you came up with the idea for the bees and when you first learned about this incredible gift they have and how they communicate with humans and why it's important to tell the bees things?
Oh, absolutely. I was for many years a school teacher. I worked in the nonprofit sector, and we had a snow day, which is fairly unusual here in Nashville for
In
it to snow.
Nashville, yeah.
Yes. And so I was home because of the snow, because we will close everything down with
Well, you
half an
don't
inch.
have winter tires.
No,
We're
we don't.
acclimated to it. I always get mad when people I'm like, you're not prepared.
We are not
We are
prepared.
prepared in
Right.
Canada, not in. So, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
dangerous.
Oh, yeah, it's for everybody's good that we stay home. So I
Yeah.
was home scrolling social media when I should have been doing something maybe more productive. But a friend of mine who's a gardener posted a small newspaper article about a beekeeper. It was from 1940, in the 1940s, and a beekeeper had died, and all of his bees, thousands of his bees, he was a beekeeper, thousands of his bees came to his funeral. They flew from his home to the cemetery and lighted on the tent and on the floral sprays and stayed for the entire service. And then at the conclusion of the service, they flew back home to their hives. And and the article just said he was known to have a way with his bees. And I couldn't leave that alone. I'm like, what in the world? So I started looking up bees going to funerals. And I found, I know, I found this wonderful tradition called telling the bees. And it's an ancient Celtic tradition where if anything big happens in your family, like a death or a birth, or someone is moving away, or a marriage, anything like that, you need to tell your bees because they are part of your family. And if they are not included as part of the family, all of these terrible things will happen. They will get sick, they might die themselves, they will stop making honey, or they'll just fly away. And you don't want any of those things to happen. You want your bees to stay with your family. So the tradition says go down to their hives, knock 3 times on the hive, and tell the bees what has happened in your family. And I was fascinated by this and started more research and found that this is done in many places around the world, this communication with bees. And I just thought that was so lovely, this symbiotic relationship that we have with bees, and how the idea of nurturing your bees and keeping them up to date as family members, I thought was so lovely. But of course, with my writer brain, I thought, when I was considering all of the people talking to their bees, I thought, well, what would happen if the bees talked back?
Oh, it's so good.
And that's where Bees in June came from, the idea. And then the title, Bees in June, comes from a 17th century beekeeping poem that I also found that says, in part, a swarm of bees in June is worth a silver spoon. And when I read that, I was just, it just sounded like a title to me. And I thought, well, this book is going to be called Bees in June.
It's so beautiful. And even in the advanced reader copy, which I have, I enjoy that the little bee illustrations are near, because sometimes in advanced copies, we don't always have the final typeset and the flourishes and the embroiderments, etc. But this one was quite charming. And I have to tell you that thinking about it is wasp and bee season right now in Toronto, where they're all over the place. And I've actually, knowing that our conversation was coming up, I usually, of course, want to swat them away when I'm walking or what have you, but I've been a little bit more reverent towards bees. They are annoying. They can sting, but they're so integral to fertility, to life growing, to how the ecosystem of the world works, to obviously giving us honey, but we read about how they do so much for us in ways that we don't quite understand. And it's almost a barometer for the health of the world, for the health of farms, for the health of gardens, to have a thriving bee population. Obviously, and when we hear things like, well, if the bee population dies off, that's going to be I really loved that the bees serve as a really wonderful theme in the book that will hopefully just a small little creature that has such a big impact. And there's a lovely hint of that magic realism here in the way that Rennie begins to, of course, live like Uncle Dixon, receiving messages from the bees. Do you think that Rennie's grief, again, everyone watching, that's established early on, she loses
Yes.
a child, um, makes her more susceptible and open to believing the enchantment of the insects?
Oh, I love that question. I am going to say yes. She is the book opens where she's on her back porch, and she has recently lost her only child who was born prematurely, and she is at her lowest, so vulnerable and so wounded, and hardly able even to stand up and move around. She thinks her life is absolutely over. So she's at a very vulnerable point. And so I think she is more, her emotions are more at the surface, where she's just been through this horrible trauma. And I think that she is still very emotional about that, and maybe is more open to hearing the message, that first bee that comes to her for help. And I love that, because I had never thought about that element. But of course, she was very vulnerable at that point to almost anything. And the fact that it was the bee that came and started her to get her help and started her on this journey, that maybe if she'd been busy, maybe if her child had lived and she was a busy mom with a newborn, or busy just running the farm or whatever else she might have been doing, maybe she wouldn't have been as receptive to a visit from a bee who needed her help.
And I love it because it does establish the special kismet, the relationship she has with her uncle who raises her and who is such a wonderful father figure. I also just really loved that her son who very, who passes was named Gabriel, who's a messenger, and the bees are messengers. I love little details like that when I read books. It's just so lovely. And this is a bit of an odd question, but in every Instagram post of this book, you play Audrey Hepburn's version of Moon River from Breakfast
Yes.
at Tiffany's, which obviously is very relevant because the film came out, I think it was 60, I can't remember, but it's in the late 60s. And what
Yes.
is it about that song that because often, people just pick music on Instagram, but the fact that you use it continually, I figured there has to be something that you want to express through that song paired with this book.
Yes, I picked that for a reason. Well, when Rennie first marries her husband, whose nickname is Tiny, his real name is Luther, but he's this big baseball star, and they move up north to for him to start his big deal baseball career. He says to her, he took her to a matinee or a yeah, a matinee of Breakfast at Tiffany's, and he said to her, he leaned over and said, "This will be our song," when Moon River came on. So there's that connection. And then later, when he's negotiating with her about something, he mentions that he would maybe take her to Tiffany's and get a ring. But the idea is deeper than that. It's that wistfulness and the innocence that even though Audrey Hepburn's character is doing what she's doing, she's so innocent and um, sweet. Just such to me, such a sweet character. And I feel like this book is, in a way, innocent and sweet also, or Rennie is, facing all the things that I threw at her. She's trying to do her best, but there's a sweetness and an innocence that I wanted to highlight with her.
She is a very wholesome character. And one thing I love about Moon River is, yes, Breakfast at Tiffany's has undercurrents of a lot of things going on, but it's not a romantic song in terms of a man and a woman. And
Right.
obviously, Rennie has a complicated relationship with Tiny. Moon River is someone who's searching for friendship, someone who's searching for that peace and serenity that I just love. And I love that you really wanted to slow down the world with this book because that's what it does. And when I read books set in the late 60s in America, I always feel nostalgic. I wasn't alive at the time. I don't even live in the country, but this book evoked the feeling I had when watching Breakfast at Tiffany's, hearing the Henry Mancini. I've heard it both ways, but this book reminded me of To Kill a Mockingbird, and
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
not for the obvious, very, high intensity of racial injustice, but the porch swing, Atticus imparting wisdom in the same way that Uncle Dixon imparts Rennie. The fact that Uncle Dixon is so supportive of Rennie and sees into her in a way that Tiny didn't.
Yes.
I thought that was so remarkable. And yes, the end of the 60s in America, obviously, Vietnam, protests, Woodstock, but this sense that the world, at least in the US, was on the sense or the precipice of something, which made those quiet moments even more permeated in the book. Why did you choose this period of time?
Well, different reasons, lots of different reasons. My debut was The Empress of Cook County, set in
Another
19.
great, thriving verb of a book. Everyone go read it.
Thank you. That was set in 1966. And I chose that because I knew I'm a huge Beatles fan, and I knew that the Beatles had played in Memphis, Tennessee in 1966 in August. And it's dual POV, a mother and daughter, and I wanted the daughter to do something I could only dream of, which is going to a Beatles concert. And so I chose 1966 for that. And I wanted to set Bees in June in the same town. So I thought, well, looking at the after 1966, what are the historical markers that I could use, real historic events, to tie this book to reality? Because I knew it was going to have magical realism and I wanted it to have some kind of anchor. And I remembered because I am old enough to remember when I was a little girl, my mother told me, come watch this. And she had the moon landing on the television, the little black and white TV. And she said, watch this. You're going to remember it the rest of your life. And I watched it and I have remembered it. And the idea, the optimism and the we can do it kind of feeling of this is possible. We can put a man on the moon and bring him back home safely again seemed almost impossible to believe. And there are some people who don't think it really happened, and Tiny is one of those people.
Tiny is definitely one of those people, and I got very frustrated with him.
Yes, but would you expect anything more from him? He thinks
No.
yes, it was all filmed out in Hollywood.
Tiny does not, Tiny is definitely not someone we need to, don't worry, readers, you'll feel the same way about him. He is not the point of this book.
Oh no.
Um, but I agree that they're just so I think because Julie and I we were just talking to Jane Healy a few weeks ago about how there's always these moments where you are aware of the fact that you're living through a magnanimous moment in history. And I feel there's so much, since the pandemic, since everything going on in the world, it's almost like someone's going to go back and write a textbook about the time period that we're living in.
Mhm.
And I like to think that just as we retreat to look at some of the softer popular culture from the 1960s, the Beatles, the excitement in the arts, Breakfast at Tiffany's, that people will look back and see how art and books and literature and music are often how a language in which people understand a time period where they might not necessarily understand all of the political inclinations and all of the different metrics going on. Um, and I just really want to say again that your book is a slow pause in even a publishing industry where everything is fantasy and romantasy and fast and binging Netflix. It is something you can settle into. Was it hard to say goodbye to these characters and their world? Because it must have been nice, especially since you say you were working on the deck in Perry Sound-ish, around that area on the lake. Um, was it hard to say goodbye to them and get back to the real world?
Well, I haven't said goodbye. Feel like,
I
I mean,
love that.
I, I feel like they're with me all the time.
Yeah.
And I can't give them up. A precious bookseller at Parnassus gave me a little gift on launch night, and it was a little felted bee. And she's on my dashboard. She's about an inch
Oh,
long. And I have her on my dashboard as I'm doing my book tour, and she's going with me. I've named her Eugenia, and she for Rennie's aunt, and she's going with me. I cannot give these people up. I created them and I'm keeping them.
And you should. And I have to ask, was your book launch with Jennifer Mormon?
Yes.
Oh, because speaking of beautiful, beautiful magic realism, actually, I
Yes.
want to set up, Julie, make a note of this offline. I want to set up a chat with Jennifer for The Charmed Library, which is just absolutely the most gorgeous book. I don't know if you've gotten an advance copy yet, but read it.
I've
Um,
only seen the cover, but
oh,
oh, it just draws you in.
we will make our team give you a couple. Like, that's one of the fun things about writing for a publisher. You can say, "Hey, can I get a copy of this?" I really feel that there's also a sense of, we spoke about your first novel, which is very different tonally, but still has the idea of generations passing wisdom. And
Yeah.
so, did you have an Uncle Dixon in your life? Is there a communication, or was it your mother, perhaps? You mentioned her, or was it Eleanor Roosevelt in your kitchen? Um, where did that generational tenet of the book come from?
Well, it started with my grandmother, the one who did have Eleanor Roosevelt making
Can you
breakfast.
at least tell us that
Yes.
anecdote? Because that's amazing.
Yes. My grandparents, well, my grandfather was an engineer, and he helped design, or I guess you don't design them, help construct dams, about how dams should be built. And he traveled the world consulting on dams all over everywhere. And that the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, was building dams, and the Roosevelts were invited down to see them. And since my grandfather was one of the ones who worked on it, he was in charge of this. And it's inconceivable now, but Mrs. Roosevelt came because the president was not always well, and so she did a lot of his traveling, or a lot of his engagements for him. And so she came, and no security, no nothing. She stayed in my grandparents' house. And she was going to ride in the car and go see the dam and do the photo op thing. And my grandmother was very worried about this, and she had planned to get up very early to go downstairs to fix breakfast for Mrs. Roosevelt. And so my granny woke up and put on her bathrobe and scurried downstairs to start breakfast. She walks in, and Eleanor Roosevelt is making bacon and eggs for her in the kitchen.
Yeah, that would never happen
No,
nowadays, especially,
never.
good security for everything. But everything I have ever learned about Eleanor Roosevelt just shows that she was such a remarkable person. I love that story. And as I said, and we'll get to questions that are not just my rambles, but I love, I knew they'd tell you. Uncle Dixon tells Rennie, the bees, they know I love you. The bees are messengers, yes, but they're also confidants. And I loved the fact that there were little messages that the rest of the world could not hear or see, especially from someone who has been through such a staggering moment of grief like Rennie has. I really was really touched by this, and I think readers will be too. Anyone who's known loss or has lost, I can't even fathom this, lost a child, lost an infant. Um, all Gabriel ever knew, I can't even read my writing, was love, Uncle Dixon says. Because yes, he never really got to live, but the moments that he was alive, he knew love. So my very base question here is, did you sob while writing that? Because I was really taken aback by how profound and moving that was, and how that message could help so many people who have known premature loss.
I did a lot of crying when I wrote the book. And that was one of the moments. The loss, and I have not experienced what Rennie did. She has lost her son, and she's also in an abusive marriage. And what I did to her, I feel terrible about it, but in the 60s, a lot of women were defined by being a wife and a mother.
Yeah.
And that's just the lens that they were viewed through. And so I took those basic things away from her, that she wasn't going to be a mother of a child on earth. I make this point that she is always going to be a mother, even though
Yeah.
her child's in heaven, but she was not going to be parenting a living child. And her marriage is falling apart. It's decaying in front of her eyes. So I took those things away from her to to deepen her grief that she's just at her lowest point. And I haven't experienced those things, but I've had tremendous loss in my life. I think we all have, and there's no way to walk through the world without suffering loss. Or I don't know anyone who's gone through with no.
No.
And trying to come to some sort of understanding about why that is where that came from. And that was a hard place to start the book. But I did, and I cried, and then I cried later on. There was something I won't give it away, but I was sobbing on my back porch here. There's a theme I like to write outside, and
Yeah, there's porches.
my husband came home from the office. He's a lawyer, and the suit and tie, and he had the briefcase, and he'd been in court all day. And so he comes in and he sees me just weeping on the back porch. And he comes out and he goes, "Oh my gosh, what has happened?" And I told him what happened in the book. And he just looked at me. He said, "Well, you really should have seen that coming, Elizabeth."
You kind of are the orchestrator of what
Right.
happened, but
Yeah,
I
but I knew it was going to happen. I mean, I knew these things would happen, but it was very profound for me to write about them and the emotions that my characters feel about these things.
and I love that you mentioned that you took away the things that would have been her defining characteristics at this period of time. I do want to shout out to another book everyone needs to read, which is by Marie Bostwick, and it's the book Club
Oh,
for Troublesome Women. And it
yeah.
really looks into, same time period, but how women were starting to, craft this identity. And what's amazing about Rennie is when she loses what would have been her traditional role,
Right.
finds identity in the fact that she has the capacity to hear new things and new messages, and it helps establish and deepen that relationship she has with her uncle. I mean, I'm a sucker for forged families and unique ways people connect. And this is just a really and we should go for audience questions soon. So Julie, get on that. This is a really beautiful book, and it's very beautifully written, and I can tell that it was written with a lot of care. And I hope that everyone watching the YouTube replay, if you haven't yet, make sure that you pick up a coffee. It would make a great gift for people. But it's also, as I said before, a moment to actually slow down in a world that is full of a lot of noise. This book is not. And we're given enough silence that, like Rennie, we can hear the
Mm.
ease. And I thought that was really lovely.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I find the world very stressful right now, and
Yeah.
I wanted a personal escape from it. And I think other people might welcome an escape from all of the stress and all that's going on right now.
Absolutely. And a great conversation. Thank you both so much. One of the things as I was listening and I was thinking about this book is, and I apologize, haven't read it, but sounds like it's the kind of book that is ageless. Any age could read it.
Yes.
You could
Yeah.
have, the young 30
Like this is
somethings all the way up to
this
like
is
my mom who's 90, who's 100.
it's Christmas. I know in the book world it's Christmas season now, even though it's September, but this is a Christmas gift book for
Right.
sure.
Or that
Oh,
hostess gift where you don't know like
yeah.
what you may not know somebody's reading tastes. This sounds
Yeah.
like it's a universal kind of
Oh, and it's
book and
it's
story.
accessible to everybody. It's lovely moments. There's nothing in it that you wouldn't be able to show up and talk about at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
And
Right.
maybe depending on who you're with, maybe the moon landing might offend some people, but let's just
Yeah.
assume that that
Well,
we're all with people who
Isn't that only
acknowledge.
isn't that only US people that are like conspiracy theorists on that?
I
probably.
Oh, I think that's very much, unique to, but hey,
Hey, you
what do
never
you
know.
do?
Well, Christina does have a question. And she said she was lucky enough to get an advanced listening copy and loved it with her whole heart. And she'd love to know if you played a part in the decision to give the bees their own narrators. She said it added so much to the production of the
Wait,
audiobook.
the bees have their own narrators? That's so cool.
Well, yes. Actually, it was quite a moment in my discussions with the publishers when it was time to cast the audiobook. Um, Harper Muse came to me and said, "We want men to read the parts of the bees because the bees do have their own point of view in the story, and they have several small chapters. They are a Greek chorus mixed with nosy neighbors, so the bees do talk." And Harper Muse said, "Well, we need men to read the bees." The parts of the bees, and I was shocked. I said, "You want drones to read the parts of the bees?" Because beehives are very matriarchal in their design, and the drones serve one purpose, really, which is to make more bees for the hive, which is very important. But they do not gather the nectar and do all of the day-to-day work. Those are the female bees. The worker bees are female. And I said, I just don't think drones should be reading this. And they said, well, if someone's listening to the audiobook, they will not be able to differentiate between the human narrator and the bee narrator unless we make them men. And I said, well, in my head, when I wrote it, they were British somehow. And
Oh,
I
that's so cool.
well, it's a Celtic tradition, and I'm such an Anglophile, and I had trouble finding their voice because I knew it had to be a different voice from the one I'm used to writing in. And as I'm puzzling out where to find the bee's voice, when I made them British in my head, it helped me, and I'm like, oh, now I get these bees. And so I asked, well, can they be British voices, men, British men narrating? And they're like, no, no one is going to understand that Celtic link. And why would British bees be living in Tennessee? And so I'm like, okay. So I did get to choose the two wonderful narrators who voiced the parts of the bees, and they did such a tremendous job. But it was a journey getting there because I had envisioned them as women, British women, but we ended up with American drones. But I'm also proud that I have gainfully employed two drones, which is two more than anybody else has.
And if anyone's watching or listening and thinks, what, the bees talk, do you remember how in lessons in chemistry, there's the dog viewpoint and you just fall into it? This is not going to take you out of the story. In fact, it's quite whimsical. And that's one of my favorite behind the scenes publishing tidbits ever, that all of this went into the audio, including British male bees.
I know
Yes,
exactly.
I was advocating hard, but
You fought.
I did. But I figured that they knew better than I did, and I just, in my heart, I have them as British in my head. Well, and certainly when I was writing, they were British, just to help
I,
me differentiate between all of the humans.
I love it. I do love that. And I love that you brought that up, Christina. Thank you. It gave us a fun little insight there. Question for me, Elizabeth. Um, Do you ever see yourself returning to either any of the characters in this book or in a previous book that you've written, or do you always just start with a new, fresh idea?
Well, I knew that I wanted, well, I wrote Bees in June before I wrote The Empress of Cook County. And when I queried it hard because I loved that book. And it was not the version that is out now. It was, Rennie was younger. She was 17. Her goal was to go to college. So it was a different book. But I was told over and over again, it's too sweet. Sweet books don't sell. You can't sell a sweet book. And so I thought, okay, I'll write one that's not as sweet. And I wrote The Empress of Cook County. And then I ended up, the most exciting thing that's ever happened, an auction for the manuscript for The Empress of Cook County. And it was four publishers bidding against each other. And somewhere in the mix, a second book was thrown in. And when that happened, I thought, okay, I'm going to get my sweet story in there. And so I knew when I was doing final edits on The Empress of Cook County, I knew that I was going to have Bees in June coming next. And so I did add a little bit so that minor characters from the Empress of Cook County would be the main characters of Bees in June. So there was that connection. And if I ever do write a third Spark book, I'll use minor characters from Bees in June as the main characters for the next one.
I
If that,
always love that. I love that.
I
Because
love
it
it.
just it's for readers that you don't have to read them in any kind of order, but it
oh
just
no.
I love the connections.
You get the little, some inside scoop, some Easter eggs for
Right,
like, oh, I know what that is when I reference it, but you don't have to know it.
right.
It just deepens your experience as a reader.
Yeah, it's so fun. And Christina says the world needs more sweet books, and I agree, Christina. I think that that's such a true statement.
I do, but I do want to say it's also funny. I mean, there's some funny parts
Right.
in it too. It's not all just sweet and
Oh,
maudlin
it's not
and
saccharine.
No, right,
It's
yeah.
right, right.
sweet but not saccharine. It makes a statement, but it also is a nice reprieve from
Yeah, exactly.
everything.
Just from
Yes.
like some that are just like so piercingly like you're just cringing sometimes when you read some books these days where it's just like, oh, it's so hard.
You
There's
know,
so many hard things.
life is hard enough, and I don't like to write in a way that's not that's hard to read. I know
Right.
some, people say, "Well, it was hard to read, but I'm glad I read it."
Right.
I don't want a book that's hard to read.
Right.
I don't want to. That's not how I write. I want it to be very accessible, and it's a good and fun story. Um, but it's also hopeful.
Right.
I mean, that's what I want people to take away from it. It's hopeful.
Right. And Rachel, pardon me if you've already asked this because I was doing some background stuff
Yeah, no
for this,
worries.
but did you talk about Elizabeth, did you talk about your genesis of being a writer? How did you come to being an author?
Oh, well, it's I dated to when I was 4 years old. My parents, this was the 60s, my parents had a cocktail party, and my mom and dad always made us come out, and my sisters and me, to say goodnight to the guests. And in our little
How
lane,
very Von Trapp of you.
it's very, yeah, exactly. That
But it
is
was something
exactly
about the
what was
60s. I think you must have grown up in the 60s.
I did.
It was very a 60s things and our parents had their cocktail parties and
Oh, yep, that's what was going on. And I said goodnight to one of the guests, and I say that I suspect he was two martinis in when he said this, but 4-year-old me did not know it. He said, "So I heard you just turned 4." And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And he said, "So what did you pick?" And I looked at him and I said, "I don't know what you mean." And he said, "Your career. Everyone knows that when you turn 4, you have to say what you're going to be when you grow up. So what did you pick?" And I was in a full panic. I had no idea. My sister was 7 at the time. She hadn't told me. And I had no answer. I was horrified. So I'm up all night worrying about it. And I go to my mom the next day, and she knows nothing of this conversation. I said, "Mom, I have 2 questions." She goes, "Okay, what's the first question?" I said, "Are princesses real?" And she said, "Yes, some are." And then I said, "Okay, and where do books come from?" And she said, "People write them. They're called authors." And I said, "Okay, when I grow up, I want to be a princess or an author."
Oh.
Mom didn't know that story until a couple of years ago. I told her. But so I say it was when I turned 4. And then when I was 13, I had the amazing fortune of having the author Lee Smith as my seventh grade English teacher. And she gave us creative writing assignments every Friday to turn in every Friday. And she handed me back one of my papers and she just leaned down and said, "You're a writer." And I put that in my heart and I never let go of it. And I've wanted to do it all my life and always wrote while I was working full time and raising my family and all those things. I would always write. And then when I turned 40, I had my version of a midlife crisis and said, well, if my dream is to be a published novelist, I need to start with writing a novel. So I wrote my first one that didn't get anywhere, but it was too late. I loved it. And so I wrote Bees in June as my second one. And then I wrote The Empress of Cook County as my third one.
Yeah.
And the Empress book is the one that got me the agent and the auction. But I feel like Bees in June is the story of my heart.
I love that story so
Oh,
much. That's so good because it's just is proof that and you've had, I mean, that's a I have to kind of warn, and Rachel, you know this too. It's kind of a unusual publishing story that this it not that it happened quickly, but it seemed like it did a little bit as far as like getting published and having an auction. Those are some sweet things that happen that I don't think a lot of authors get.
Not,
So,
yeah, it's and but it's very, very, very common. You know, the book that got me my first agent has never been published. Got
oh.
me an agent, didn't get me a book deal. It sits in a drawer.
Huh.
Um,
But
and
I mean, the fact that she got the deal with the second, I mean,
it's
that's a Cinderella
and a
story. It's the
second book.
princess story.
But the other thing is the encouragement of having someone who has had another career and decides at a certain point in life that they want to try this too. It is never too late
Never.
at all
Mhm.
to start thinking about how you could do something different and go after the publishing dream, which is insane and a lot of hard work,
It
but
is.
obviously very worth it as well.
Well, and also, I
Why we
mean,
do
to
what we
say that,
do.
yeah, well, to say that too, for that to happen, it had to be a good book too. So The Empress obviously
Yes.
was a good book to get that. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. But it was published when I was 62. I will say that. So it is never too late.
I love it. I love that. I love that so much. So, especially as a 64-year-old woman. Although I always say, I'm not a writer, I am a reader, and I read, 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 read. So, could never be a writer. I appreciate all that you do, but it is truly a talent that you all have to do this, to entertain all of us readers. So with that, Rachel, I'm going to ask you really quickly, where, if anybody wants to find out anything more about you, where should people follow you or go to find out more info about Rachel McMillan?
So my handle everywhere is Rach Kmick, RACHKMC, on Twitter and Instagram and Threads. Um, I Instagram is usually where I share books that I'm reading, but also bunnies because bunnies make me happy. And I want to own like 12,000 of them. Twitter is where I really work at trying to decode the publishing industry and try to give people some support. But I also have a website. It's very out of date. But I think Instagram is where I'm the most accessible if people just want to know about, like, oh my gosh, I'm having trouble finishing this book, she says for the third year in a row. Writing is really hard,
It
but
is really hard.
It is.
I'm Rach Kamick everywhere, and you can find me, and I'm always talking about people's books or the industry.
Yes, you are, and you are the best uplifter of so many authors. And don't let's not forget about the Charmed book that you want us to do. So let's not forget about that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, we'll do that. I will email you after.
Email me after. And Elizabeth, if people want to know more about what you're doing, do you have a website or a newsletter or social media that you'd like to tell people about?
Sure. My website is just my name, elizabethbassparman.com. And I keep things pretty up to date there. And also through my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. I send it out once a month where I give all just the latest news of what's going on. And then I'm also on Instagram at Elizabeth Bass Parman, and I post pretty regularly. I've just started my book tour, and so I'm talking a lot about the book tour, and the upcoming newsletter is about the first two stops on the tour. So that's a good way to follow me also.
Fun,
Her
so much
Instagram is
fun.
so lovely.
I love it. Well, this was just a wonderful conversation. Elizabeth, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Rachel, as always, thank you for another great conversation.
Thank you. So nice to meet you, Elizabeth, virtually. It's really great. I'm such a fan.
And
Well,
somebody just asked real quickly, is there a way to get a signed copy? Are you doing any signed copies at Parnassus by any chance?
yes. If you order through Parnassus Books and Patchett's Bookstore in Nashville, I just put a note in there that you want a signed copy, and we can certainly do that. Or if someone just wants a book plate, I'm glad if they reach out through my website, I'm glad to send them one. If you give me a mailing address, I'll pop one in the mail to you.
Christmas
Perfect.
gifts. Woohoo.
I love it. Great. Ladies, thank you. Thanks everybody
Thank you
for
so much.
joining.
Nice to meet you,
Thank
Elizabeth.
you so much. So great
Bye.
to meet you. Bye bye.
Bye.